Hey, good afternoon and welcome to another EAMC at Home session. Today we're having a conversation with Dayna Frank. I'm Kirk Wingerson, the Marketing Division Manager for Orlando Venues, which includes Amway Center and Camping World Stadium. I'm also the Vice President of Agenda for Event and Marine Marketing Conference. Before we get underway today, I just wanted to share a few announcements. If you're not familiar with EAMC or just joining us for the first time today, we're glad you're here. EAMC is a group of professionals working in the live entertainment industry that specialize in marketing, public relations, social media, and group sales, among other roles. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover in future webinars, please join our Facebook message board and share them with us. We'd like to hear it. I also encourage you to visit our website, eventarenamarketing.com, to learn more about the organization. Within the website, there's a Career Center page, and we've removed the cost to place a job listing through the end of the year. And if you're aware of any industry openings, by all means, contact us, let us know, and we'll add it to the website. And that's completely free. And if you're looking for a new position, the Career Center is really a helpful resource, so please check in periodically. And lastly, our next EAMC at Home event is another happy hour, scheduled for next Thursday, August 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. If you joined us for the last one, it went a really long time. People were jumping in, jumping off at their convenience. You know, it was very low-key, but certainly a lot of fun. There's breakout sessions. It's a great opportunity to network with others, discussions, and it'll just be a lot of fun again. So feel free, if you can't join us at the very beginning, join us when you can. And then lastly, I would just like to say welcome to today's webinar. Again, today's moderator is Kelly McGrath. She's the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. So Kelly, welcome. Kelly McGrath.
Hi, thanks, Kirk. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Minnesota. You're actually in Stillwater today, which is about 20 miles east of St. Paul and the St. Croix River. So when we host EAMC again in Minneapolis, and I firmly believe that day will come, look forward to having you in Minnesota so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So moving on with our presentation today, I'm really excited that we have Dayna Frank joining us. Hopefully you all had a chance to read the cover story in Polestar and countless other publications that have been coming out since then with some of the work that Dayna's doing that we're going to get into. And I'm going to let her tell her own story a little bit, but it's really an honor and a pleasure that she's taking time to speak to us. So Dayna, welcome to EAMC.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. We would have loved to have you. You were one of our targets to have come and speak to us live when we were in Minneapolis to host this group of people for early June for 4 days. As you can imagine, that didn't happen. Decision was made heartbreakingly like in April, and then the whole world continued to change in Minneapolis. And we're going to get into that a little bit, but wanted just to let you know a bit of the history of this group with the 40-year anniversary that we'll mark at a later time. So welcome aboard. Good to have you here. So before we dive into a lot of what's currently on your plate, I'm hoping you can give us a little bit of an overview. Dayna, you own one of the most famous clubs in the country, if not internationally, thanks to Prince. Yeah, nice. And tell us the elevator story. You know, how did you come to own First Ave?
Yeah, so First Ave started in 1970. We just had our 50th anniversary. It was founded by a guy named Alan Fingerhut, who at 25 years old came into an inheritance. He was the heir to the Fingerhut catalog family fortune. And he saw this abandoned bus depot in downtown Minneapolis and decided it would make a great rock club. It was kind of in the era of Bill Graham and the Fillmore and some Exit In and Nashville starting up. So he and my dad were actually best friends from elementary school. They grew up in St. Louis Park in North Minneapolis. So Alan got the lease and started a venue called the Depot after the Greyhound Depot. And my dad had just graduated from the University of Minnesota with his accounting degree. And so my dad, as the CPA, kind of looked over the books and helped get the business up and running. And so they ran it, or Alan ran it for about a year as the depot, having everyone from Joe Cocker on the opening night to, Ike and Tina Turner, and Jake Gillis and some of the, legendary, kind of hippie acts or so. But
Yeah.
then he gave over the operations to a company out of Kansas City called Uncle Sam's. So then it became known as Uncle Sam's Discoteria. And they did disco and dance nights, and there was a rainbow colored dance floor that lit up, and it was, all very 1970s. And then that company actually went bankrupt in around 1978, I believe, turned into just Sam's because they didn't have enough money for a new marquee. So they just took off the Uncle, called it Sam's, started booking the Ramones and the punk bands from the CBGB's era as they were coming out. Changed the name in 1981 to First Avenue and never looked back from there. So Alan, and you asked how I came into it. So Alan and my dad worked, Alan had the operations in 2000. My dad was the manager of the Finger Hut family office, took over ownership of the building. And then when the operations went into bankruptcy in 2004, my dad, as the landlord, bought the operations. So then he had the building and the operations. And then in 2009, he had a stroke. And I was living in LA doing TV production. Flew home to kind of see where the bodies were buried, like what to do if he didn't recover, and just ended up like falling in love with the club all over again. And even though he did fully recover, I never went back. So I've been involved since 2009.
Yeah. And since then, Dayna, you've really put your own mark on First Avenue Productions, and you now have many more local clubs under your portfolio. Give us the overview of the clubs you own in town here and kind of the vibe of each of those clubs.
Yeah, so our expansion happened really organically. There was no master plan. It was literally, we started booking shows, we have the agents started, coming to us and saying, well, we want to do this, but it's not the First Avenue main room is 1550 capacity, so like, but it's smaller. What can you do there? And so we just started booking all around town. And, when owners decided to retire or they didn't want to do it anymore, we just were given these opportunities that were very, pretty incredible. So we opened a restaurant next to First Avenue. We actually have a small 250 capacity room called the 7th Street Entry. It was actually opened in 1981, but that was home of the Replacements and Husker Du, and Prince had one of his first shows there, and Soul Asylum and Nirvana, every band is kind of their first stop.
I'm old enough. I was there a couple of times.
So we have the 250 capacity entry next door. We opened a restaurant next to that called the Depot Tavern in 2010. We took over the Turf Club in Midway, St. Paul in 2013. And that's a kind of a dive bar, honky tonk, country, Western, real, combination of music venue, but also just spot you want to hang out in. It's got a basement bar called the Clown Lounge that is like a warm, cozy place to drink in the winter. And then in 2017, we opened the Palace Theater in downtown St. Paul. Oh wait, I should be changing my backgrounds. So we opened the Palace Theater, which is a public-private partnership with the city of St. Paul. The city owns the building, but we were able to, advise on the reconstruction and help determine what would make it a successful operating theater. That's a 2,500 capacity with a GA floor and a seated balcony. And then in 2018, we took over the Fine Line, which is a 650 capacity, GA rock club a couple blocks away from First Avenue in downtown Minneapolis. And then I don't have a cool picture, but then we took over the Fitzgerald Theater in downtown St. Paul, which is 1,000 capacity, fully seated, national historic landmark theater.
Yeah, it's a beautiful theater. Well, get ready, because if this group does come back next year, everybody in this business is shameless. We're all going to think we know you and going to be reaching out. Hey, I see so-and-so's at the Palace. Any chance you could, get one more in? I'll take care of you when you're in, name that city.
Miss guest list requests. I mean, just to even
Right?
go again. Yes, absolutely. Bring it on.
There's people I only hear from when they need tickets, and I'm like, where are you guys? Hi, I thought we were friends.
Part of the job.
Yeah.
I always say, like, yes, you always have the right to ask as long as you understand I always have the right to say no.
Exactly.
So,
I think
I can't do it. I can't do it. Just don't be mad at me.
Yep, this group gets that. You can ask anytime. You just are going to get an honest answer back. And just speaking of asking, want to let everybody on the call know if they do have some questions, they should be typing those into the Q&A box, and Kirk will be monitoring those. And if they are things that kind of make sense for us to take in the middle of a conversation, we will. Otherwise, we'll have plenty of time at the end, everybody, to take your questions. So make sure you start to type those in if you have them. So Dayna, let's kind of move into March of this year, which roared in like a lion and just stayed. So, March 12th down in OKC, when the NBA pulled, a player off of the court, and then the whole team came off, was really, for me, the day that stands out of holy cow, what just happened. And like a lot of people with us today, I started moving shows. We had a Lumineers show that weekend. We had Jason Aldean. We had a whole, sold out shows queued up, and everything had to start to push. But for me, when the NCAA canceled the Final Four, that for me stands out as the moment where I was like, oh crap, this is really going to be a long-term thing, just because of the revenue that's involved with that for that institution. What was it for you, Dayna? Like, do you remember that moment where you were just like, holy cow, this is really going to be a long haul for me and you times 5 with your properties in Minnesota?
Yeah, we started thinking like that really early. So for me and for us, it was really South by Southwest. I think that canceled early March. And that's when it was like, oh, this is going to be a long time. Never did I imagine it would go into the fall. I mean, that was the real shocker. So they canceled South by, and it was like, oh, this is gonna be all summer. Let's get prepared. And so, we did our projections and, plan A, B, and C, et cetera, probably towards the mid to late February. So we were, as a company, pretty well better situated than a lot of my NIVA members, for sure. So, and then March 11th, I think, is when Seattle put their capacity limits on. It was 250. And that's when we're like, oh, it's going to come actually like sooner than we thought. We kind of thought we would get through our 50th anniversary on April 3rd. You talk about 2020 was like the year that was supposed to be, right? Like this was supposed to be the best year in live music history. We had our 50th anniversary. We had 28 sold out shows in the main room in April. It was just insane. So yeah, you spent the first couple weeks rescheduling shows. Then, we're rearranging deck chairs because you move, April moved to June, and then June moved to the fall, and then the fall moved to the spring, and now the spring is moving to the fall of 2021. So it's just trying to keep your head above water and make sure that the shows are booked for when we do get the green light to reopen. But yeah, so the week of March 10th and then March 13th was the day that it really, that everything came down. We had a ban loaded into the fine line that night, and we kept waiting for the governor to come out with a mandate or something. And then finally it got so close, we're like, we can't put it on right now. And I know a lot of people operated throughout that weekend, but by Sunday, the 15th, we were down. So, you meet as a management team on that Saturday morning. We're like, okay, well, here's our plan. If we're not open by April 1st, here's our plan if we're not open by June 1st. And then, by that Monday, it was like, oh no, everything, cut it,
Right.
Cut bait.
I know. It's like, and here's a plan for the next hour, if we can, see what might happen. Right. And I think part of the challenge, and Kirk and I were talking about this yesterday, for everybody listening, every state now is different. Like everybody has their own parameters that they have to work within, which makes it really hard for acts of any size that are thinking about touring. Where can they go? What will that look like? What will be required? Which I think is really going to obviously stymie our business even more. And you feel that on the smaller venue level as much as we do on the large. Like that's certainly a commonality that a touring band is going to really have a challenge to figure out what does that look like.
No, I mean, that's kind of at the heart of our lobbying effort, is that our industry, we're not open until 100% of the company, 100% of the country is open at 100% capacity, because these bands can't amortize the cost of their tour. They can't rent the lights and hire crew and get on the bus if they can only stop in Montana and Vermont and Arkansas. You know, it doesn't make sense to tour. So I think like the drive-ins and the local stuff is cool, but you know, everyone here knows how our business is modeled. It's not modeled on the, you know, for us, you know, the 200 or 300 capacity, you know, locals nights. You know, we need those tour bands to keep people employed. And so that's how we're, you know, talking to politicians when, you know, we have to explain why, you know, why opening at a 250 capacity does not help us at all. In fact, the only thing more expensive than being closed is actually trying to open and do something. You know, 3 months ago, they did not understand that. Now I think they're starting to get it.
Yeah, and let's dive into that a little bit. Your work with, you know, organizing NIVA and how that came about. As somebody who's been in this industry for their career, I'm always amazed that even people who know what I do and know pretty well what I do don't get it. Like, don't get the effect that this has had on the live entertainment industry at all levels. And when I'll say things like, well, think of the people who sell merchandise and the ushers and the security people and the sound techs and the, you know, it's not just the Eagles. They're fine. I'm pretty sure Don Henley will be fine at the end of this. It's everybody else that touches. And it sounds like you're running into that as part of your lobbying efforts. Why do you think that is, Dayna? Like, what are you hearing that people can't seem to make the connection?
Oh, I think we've just never had to sell our industry before. You know, there had been no reason for us to go out and explain. You know, the first month, the calls that I had were like, so what's a promoter again? Like, what's the difference between a talent buyer and a booker and a promoter? Like, people didn't even understand who our employees were and how our deals were structured or anything like that. So, you know, I don't think it was that there was not interest. It was just it had never been placed in front of them before.
That's really interesting point. And it kind of is similar to when we were trying to explain why scalping and, you know, why the secondary market was not good for the primary market. And there was such a level of what you just know from being part of the industry versus what you experience when you're just a fan. So that I could see that being a huge learning curve. So tell us more about NIVA and how you came to be the head of it. You are NIVA, you're the face for sure, but like, who are some of the key players, Dayna, and how did that come together so quickly?
Yeah, so NIVA stemmed out of the Independent Venue Week town halls. So Independent Venue Week was started in the UK, and it was brought over to the US by the Reverend Moose and the Marauder Marketing Group a couple years ago, basically trying to create a record store day for venues, right? Like 1 week that everybody goes out and to their independent venue, meaning not owned by a multinational corporation or not exclusively booked by a publicly traded company. And so through the organization of Independent Venue Week, Marauder had a really good, you know, list or outreach to independent venues. And so the week of, I think, March, right after South by went down, just started getting everybody on the phone, being like, what are you hearing? Here's some like insurance advice. Here's something that we're seeing. And it was just a really powerful experience to talk to other people because, you know, we're sitting here in Minneapolis as an independent venue. We don't have offices across the country. Like, we know our community, and that's how our company is set up, is to fully service our own community. So it was really just enlightening to talk to other people that were going through what we were going through at the same time. And so that was even before Zoom. That was when it was just on a conference call.
Yeah.
Then it switched to a Zoom, and there was something really impactful. Like I said, we had realized pretty early on that this was going to be a really long haul. And so hearing some of the other venues on the town hall talk about, they were more concerned about what deals were looking like for May and June than they were about, how to preserve their cash or how to, protect themselves, et cetera. And that's when a few of us at the same time came together, like, we need a group, like, we're going to have to protect this industry. If we want people to survive and we want to have clubs and independent live music and our ecosystem of community accountable venues and promoters, we just have to figure out a mechanism of getting everybody through this. So yeah, at that same time, there were a few people that were like, well, looking at this as like an opportunity, and like, I'm going to go out and expand, and I'm going to start, buying distressed properties. And we took the opposite approach of like, we're going to try to pull as many people through this as we can.
Right.
So, yeah, so we formed the trade association. Reverend Moose from Marauder is the executive director, and really is, the beating heart. Justin Cantor from Le Poisson Rouge in New York, it runs our resources committee. So the data, the surveying, just, putting the nuts and bolts, connecting people. Hal Reel from the World Cafe Philadelphia is the governance. So bylaws, filings, codes of ethics, diversity, our DEI work, everything that goes into just operating as an organization. And then Stephen Chilton from the Rebel Lounge in Phoenix does membership. So the qualifications to be a member of NIVA are, you can't be owned, operated, or exclusively booked by a multinational or publicly traded company. So just getting the influx of applications and making sure people meet the membership criteria and handling, all the questions that come with that.
Right.
As well as programming. We do panels each week with promoters and agents. And then Steven Sternstein is the treasurer who oversees finance and partnerships.
Well, it's been amazing to watch as an outsider and learning more about you to prepare for today. You're the president of your organization, dealing with the very real circumstances of people you love and probably have worked with forever, and needing to furlough people and restructure, and at the same time putting on this whole other kind of a new hat in terms of working with the legislative process, which I always say it's like seeing how the sausage is made, and it's just not the prettiest way that anything gets moved forward, and there's so much horse trading that goes on to get what you want. So tell us on that note, where are things at? Like, where are you at with Restart, with Save Our Stages, with the Encore Acts? Just to get everybody aware of where things are at for your efforts right now.
So we hired the lobbyist firm Aiken Gump. They are kind of like the biggest, baddest, 800-pound gorilla. It seemed, opposite from our nature as independents to really be like, F the man, let's just hire the one person who loves, blah, 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 the one person shop. And, but, when it's not an exercise, right? We don't have a lobbyist on staff just to, try to get some incremental change. And as a show, like, we need support. My members need support, or they're not going to make it through this. So we hired the people we thought could help make that happen. And we've been pretty overwhelmed by I don't want to say success because we don't have the support yet, but by the response and especially the public response. And the politicians have been supportive. Like, I feel like we've gotten the support we need. We have the Save Our Stages Act, which is our industry carve out. It is, access to 45% of 2019 gross revenues that can be used until I think the end of 2021 to pay for employees, overhead, insurance, the expenses that we need to keep our businesses sound to be able to reopen when it's safe to do so. We were the first people to get behind the Restart Act, which is from Senators Bennett from Colorado and Young from Indiana, to really say, like, this is what business needs, right? Like, the PPP was a great program when we thought we were going to be down for 3 to 6 months. The PPP was a miracle. Now that we know it's going to be 12, 18, God forbid, 24, we need more. We need a different program. And so the Restart really is industry agnostic, but gives forgiveness based on decrease of revenue. So we all know who the hardest hit industry is. It's us. It's all of us. So it feels like, America's resources should go to help people who have been the hardest hit. And then we have the Encores Act, which gives a 50% tax credit for the refunded tickets. Because not only are we the hardest hit industry, it's like somebody took a vacuum cleaner to our bank account as we refund all of these tickets.
Exactly, which again, this group knows well. They've been the face to the fan of how that works. And sometimes.
Yes, we've received very little, we've received no opposition. The conversations have been everywhere from, wow, I'm so sorry, I'll try to help you, to I'm going to champion your cause and do everything I can to get you help. So now we're at the stage where we had Leader Schumer do a press conference that he's going to do everything he can to get this through. We have Senator John Cornyn, who's Republican leadership, leading the Save Our Stages Act. Our own Senator Amy Klobuchar doing everything she can. Really like bipartisan support. This issue, like, it's not, everyone thinks of the arts as a real left-leaning Democrat, but we're able to go in and really tell the story of what we mean to our local communities, that we're mom and pop shops. We have personal guarantees. We've been on Main Street for 20 years, and we've gone through the normal economic ups and downs, and we've adapted. But this is one where we can't adapt to not being able to gather.
Right. And you're revenue drivers for so many other things around you. Same as the Xcel Energy Center. I mean, 7th Street is hurting right now because we don't have great summer concerts that we had lined up, and all those venues that depend on those big nights and have it budgeted for the year. Whatever the size of the venue, you're going to drive all that revenue around. So on that note, and where you're currently at with your legislative efforts, what are some things this group can do right now to help keep everything move forward?
Yeah, so we're driving people to saveourstages.com. That was our hashtag campaign that was trending on Twitter, and it has our advocacy tool to send emails to representatives. It's super easy. It's 30
so
seconds.
Easy.
So we're trying to keep all the advocacy going through saveourstages.com so we can track it. So right now we have about 1.8 million emails sent to Congress. We're trying to get up to 2 million to, show the public support behind this, and that people really care. We might be a niche industry, but people who love live music will die. Well, I don't want to say the word die, but will really go to bat for it and feel really, really passionate about it. Right. So just being able to show that support was really key to the, opening the doors to the politicians. So yeah, so we're trying to drive people to saveourstages.com, posting on socials. Right now, the key is really explaining, and arenas, you guys are in a little different situation, but that like the live music industry is not going to look the same if we don't get help. It's going to be a different world and a different landscape. And especially as clubs, Nirvana played their first show in the 7th Street entry, and then they developed their fan base, they developed their sound, they honed their record. They went up to the main room at 1550, and then they play arenas. Bands don't start off playing arenas. Without clubs, there aren't going to be enough to fill the bigger stadiums. Like, this is where artists develop and where they get the fan base to make that jump. Yeah,
I always use Prince as the easy example, right? Without a First Ave, we don't have 3 sold out nights of Prince in a row at the Xcel Energy Center.
Lizzo is probably the best example. We promoted 30 Lizzo shows. We did her record release show at the Triple Rock. We did her band. We did her first band. We did her second band. Then we did her solo. And then finally, like on her, 25th show, she sold out the main room. Yeah. And then we went to the Palace. And now, we all know she's festival headliner, Triple Xcel, et cetera.
Right. She's welcome anytime at the Xcel if she's listening.
Totally. But artists like Lizzo, they don't, they don't develop their sound without those early experimentations. And so without the club and without that ecosystem, the music industry is seriously at risk.
Yeah. And I think for this group, when you have a minute to go to that website, to saveourstages.com, the website is so well done, it could not be easier to contact your key legislative people. Your own senators will be listed there. You put in your zip code and your own representative is listed, and it's literally a click to send out a note. I did it in no time. So I really encourage everyone, because we don't have the Lizzos if we don't have the independent venues taking a risk on these artists and helping them, get their start to get the world. They have to start somewhere. Not everybody's going to be the next YouTube sensation. There's only so many of those out there, and even there they got to start small and build it up. So we are all so interconnected, which is why
even the biggest YouTube stars or even the biggest streaming stars, they also start at clubs.
Yeah.
Jojo Siwa, like Lindsay Sterling, I mean, they started their first tour, like they didn't even sell out first half, right? Like they also have to develop that fan base that is willing to pay for a ticket and get off their couch and go, pay for parking, etc.
Yeah. I still don't quite understand JoJo Siwa, but Kirk, do you save a question that someone had?
Yeah, we've got one question that just came in. It's for Dayna. What are your thoughts on the Red Alert campaign that is going across the world for the industry right now?
Yeah, I think it's great. First Avenue, we're definitely participating. I think anything that keeps our cause in the news and keeps us top of mind, that's NIVA's goal for the next, as this bill gets delayed and delayed and delayed. It's keeping up the drumbeat of making sure people remember that we're still here and that, we still need help and we haven't gotten it yet. So I think the Red Alert campaign seems, if it's publicized right and really successful at getting the word out, could be really impactful. I'm glad they moved the date. I don't know if everyone's aware, they moved it from August 27th to September 1st. So hopefully the arenas, you guys probably have like external LED. It's easier for you. I think we're working with production companies who are gonna have to actually come and like set up lights and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, anything like that keeps people aware.
Expand on that, Dayna. What are you hoping that will happen on the 1st? We all go red? Like, what's the goal of that day?
Oh, so the Red Alert campaign that started in the UK. It was a British campaign. It was #WeMakeEvents, and it was more employee driven to remind people of all of their production and the event workers who are out of work. And so they did it in the UK and got like Royal Albert Hall and the museums, and I think they got the London Tower lit red, and just a really like amazing campaign. And so a couple of folks are bringing it over to the US and going around trying to get as many buildings lit red on September 1st as possible.
So Dayna, we got a follow-up question, and it is, have you been able to get celebrity support to help amplify the message to the masses?
So we had an artist letter that we sent to Congress. So that was our first, we went into the politicians, like explaining our economic impact and what we mean to Main Street. And then we were pretty overwhelmed by the amount of industry support that started coming out. So we had an industry letter signed by Amazon, Spotify, the record labels, the PROs, basically saying like, you can't let the clubs die because without them, we are not going to have the next generation of talent. And then we had an artist letter that was signed by over 800, it might be up to 1,000 now, artists, everyone from Billie Eilish and Billy Joel and Coldplay, all the way down to the emerging artists, but that said, Congress, please help the clubs, because without these clubs, I couldn't have developed my sound. And we've had some musicians doing press and donating their live stream proceeds to NIVA. That's been really cool. I don't know if anyone saw the Joe Strummer tribute that's going to be tomorrow night, with like Bruce Springsteen and Billy. I mean, just really like an unbelievable lineup, and they came to us and wanted to donate. So that was really cool.
That's really cool. I did see that. So that's tomorrow?
That is, I believe, tomorrow. Yeah, the 27th.
Yeah. I know that you got so much going on. So we're touching now a little bit about helping people that are have been affected by the industry. Many are on this call. I know that a lot of our colleagues have been furloughed or fully laid off, and with no sign of when people will be coming back. And I know one thing that you're involved with, and First Ave has had set up for a while, is the Twin Cities Music Community Trust. And now it's the Entertainment Industry Relief Fund, kind of got tacked onto that. Tell us a little bit about that. I know, and then I have some thoughts on how maybe some larger venues can help in their communities too.
Yeah, so we actually had a 501c3 that our employees were running to support production workers and folks without access to entertainment or other relief, that was started in 2006. And I think last year, 2019, they were like, oh, we don't want to run this anymore. We're going to shut it down. I was like, wait a second. No. I'm sure First Avenue, we would love a foundation. Well, so we took it, we assumed responsibility. And we were going through a strategic planning session, talking to our artist community and talking to employees about what should it's called the Twin Cities Music Community Trust, but, kind of, very basic strategic planning, like what should this foundation be for? What should it do? And then COVID hit. And so immediately we're like, emergency relief fund, that's what we need to do. So we started in the same announcement that we said we were shut down for the indefinite future. We're able to say, but please donate to here. So we raised about $200,000 and distributed it to artists, touring professionals, and music industry service professionals in the amount of like a $500 stipend. And so we distributed almost all of the funds. We're about to go out on another fundraising campaign. We reserved a little bit, knowing that PUA was going to expire. We're like, oh, people are going to be really hurting. So we're going to open it up to a second round for applicants and keep trying to help people make it through this. The money went about 50% went to artists, 25% went to production, and about 25% went to service. And it wasn't just First Ave employees. I think
anybody,
only
right?
10% were First Ave employees.
Yeah, and for us on the bigger venue side, we were feeling that same pain. Like we knew that a lot of people who depend on part-time work or full-time work at our venue were really, really hurting. And so we actually partnered with Anheuser-Busch to make a production of what we called Songs for the Cities. And we had a local DJ, Chris Hockey, was doing some one-on-one interviews with different local artists so they could tell their story and talk about the impact. Now it all came out right during the unrest, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But AB was all on board. Like they got it. Because all of their venues are hurting. They're not selling as much product. So just to offer that to this group, to think creatively, because we're all looking for make goods too for our corporate partners. So they may be looking for a way to help the music industry, and it might not be your own building, but it's certainly people who are going to be affected. We have the same sound guys going everywhere, right? And the lighting guys. I wanted to call a lighting guy to come here today, but didn't happen. I can't get on the call sheet in time. I don't want the 4-hour minimum, but so I think just to offer this group for people to get creative, and there are partners that may want to help step up, or we all have a lot of contacts of people who love live music. We have mailing lists, we have databases, we have social media accounts. Some of you have really impressive social accounts that could really amplify the message of NIVA right now. And I know we're not members, but it's the whole go under the Save Our Stages or the restart. There's a lot of ways to do it that stay away from it. Well, we're managed by, a Live Nation building or an ASM building. It's still, everybody needs this micro system, the ecosystem to be doing well.
Yeah,
so hopefully we can do that.
I can send you some art too, if folks would be willing to include in newsletters or socials. We have all of those assets. It would be really, really helpful. And again, this is like, I hate using the words life and death because we're in the middle of a health crisis, but for our industry, this really is life and death. Like we did an initial survey, like, okay, how much cash on hand do you guys have? Like how long as a independent venue can you survive without access to more funds? And it was terrifying.
Right.
I mean, it was between 3 and 6 months, and 90% of our members couldn't last longer. And it's, access to capital is what it's all about right now, because the banks aren't lending to us, because we're seen as really risky. And they, the first thing we did is go around looking for a financing solution for our members. We're like, okay, if the government doesn't come through, how else can we help people survive? And we were told across the board, without a reopening date, we don't know how to collateralize you. So we can't lend to you. And so it really is, you know, there's no other option. Like, no one wants to go ask the government for money. Like, I've been much happier paying the government sales taxes and property taxes and payroll and everything. Like, you don't want, that's not anyone's, like, that's certainly not what I was anticipating my 2020 was going to be about. But at the same time, there is no other access to capital. So yeah, any support, and just knowing that, like, you know, these numbers are real, and this is the state of our clubs right now.
Right. And it's not my decision, but I'm gonna just go ahead and say we'll put that up on the EAMC board on Facebook so that folks can see those assets and use them if they need them to help with your message. So let's change gears a little bit. We talked at the top of the conversation, Dayna, we would have had the Event Arena Marketing Conference the first weekend of June in Minneapolis, right downtown, right down the street from your First Ave property. And then obviously in the midst of the pandemic, we had the murder of George Floyd, and the peaceful protest, the sometimes protest that turns to riots. And one of your clubs, you mentioned the Turf Club, was in the heart of some of the Midway unrest. The Midway is an area in St. Paul. It's midway between St. Paul and Minneapolis, and that's where the Turf Club lies. And tell us what happened to the Turf Club in the wake of a protest that was no longer what the day was intended for, when the rioting, it just, like, to me, it's like two separate agendas that were happening. But the Turf Club certainly took the brunt of that in the Midway. Yeah,
so the riots were happening in South Minneapolis, which is like really far from Midway. Honestly, it's like really hard to get there. It is not in the same location. You would never link the two, South Minneapolis and Midway. So we boarded First Avenue. We had security at First Ave. We thought, as you know, it's a direct shot to South. So we thought if people are looking for a high level target, if looking for publicity, like, First Ave could really be a target. So we secured First Ave. We secured the Palace and the Fitz, both kind of higher profile. And we thought, oh, maybe they'll, you know, maybe downtown St. Paul. Never. The Fine Line is like across the street from the first precinct. So we're like, oh, the Fine Line's going to be a target. Never did we imagine the Turf Club. So then it was like, I want to say the afternoon of Thursday, May 28th. And we heard that the rioting was in Midway. And we were like, oh, I don't know if I can swear. Like, oh no. So we tried to get over there, and the streets were all secured, and they weren't letting anyone through. So we couldn't access the building. And we had people who lived in the area who were walking past, and they're like, it's so weird. Like, the CVS next door is looted, and the other store is looted, but no one's touched the Turf Club. And we're thinking, like, okay, maybe we'll be okay. And then around midnight, we got, you know, the signal that our alarm went off, and it was still looting and rioting, and we couldn't access the building. And so then I showed up at around 7 a.m. the next morning to find that all the sprinklers were going off. It looked like you're walking into a swimming pool, and had, you know, called the fire department, flagged down some people. They had to, you know, break into the sprinkler room. So I didn't have keys, unfortunately. And by the time we turned off the sprinklers, it was, you know, the damage was done. So it turned out that somebody had come in, tried to light a fire behind the bar to light up the alcohol, but the sprinklers went off and they fled. So I should also add that it was also my birthday. That was 2020 has been a real experience. So
why wouldn't it have been? You know,
why not? Yeah, so that's what happened to the Turf Club, and we thought, okay, water damage, it's okay. And then it turns out that the water damage had caused structural damage, and it's basically an entire rebuild.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to try to share my screen. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully everybody can see this, but so this is the Turf Club, your Twitter account, where you guys came out very quickly and said, you know what, we need to come out of this with a more equitable, just society. It's morally imperative, and Minneapolis-St. Paul can lead the way. And then the comment, like, unfortunately the turf was hurt last night, but we'll rebuild. We're not dead. You know who's dead? George Floyd. And my question for you, Dayna, is clearly it's your quote, so you were involved. I think a lot of us are always under the, oh, what can we say? What should we say? What can we post? Now it's a little different. This is you, right? These are your babies, so you get a little more leeway. What happened here? How was this thought process that you, as an organization, came to the conclusion to just, in my opinion, go big?
So that was I actually posted that on my personal account.
Okay.
And I just, I got home, it was my birthday. I had been at First Ave all night. I had gotten home to like shower and then go out to the turf club. I had no sleep and I was really fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
So I wish again,
it was my birthday, damn it. Come on.
I wish I could say there was more of a thought process, but it was really like, wow, this is terrible. And then, it's really just like, let's contextualize this. It's a building. We're very fortunate to have insurance. We're exceptionally fortunate that we had the riot coverage on our insurance. So we're okay. And I just thought it was really important to just put it, I knew people would freak out about the turf. The turf is a beloved, it's been around since, the 40s. It's, where people meet, it's where they get married. It's where they have the most important nights of their lives. So I knew people would freak out, and I was like, let's just make sure you think about when you're freaking out about the turf, what we should really be freaking out, which is systemic racism and racial injustice. And we had a lot of people ask, so I actually posted it on my personal account, and then my marketing director saw it and she was like, can I post this on our accounts? I think it's really important that everyone know how you think. So I like to say, I always have like a millennial mentor and a Gen Z mentor who help me understand these generations, because sometimes I don't get it. So I really trust them. And, that's kind of like my leadership, outlook is to just hire the best people and let them get to work. So she said, I think we should post this. And I said, okay, let's do it.
Yep. Nope. I have the same. Chris, I know he's listening. So where are you now in that conversation? Is your organization in a formal role, more an organic role, with the idea of, we are, Minneapolis, St. Paul remains ground zero, but it's obviously in everybody's cities that are on the call. What do you see as your role now in that space?
That's a great question. I still think that Minneapolis, St. Paul can lead the way in building a society, a system that works for everybody, because our city has really serious issues going back to its founding. And, I completely understand why people are rioting. It makes all the sense in the world to me. And I just hope that our city puts the pieces back together in a way that's just and equitable, because this is an opportunity to really think about the hows and the whys and what we're doing here and how our city should run, and to not just do things the way it's always been done. And do I think they'll do that? I hope so. It's not, I don't have control over that.
And there's no easy answers. When I think about it, it sounds like similar, like everybody is having to change how we do things right now, like we all are. So let's look at some of the other, long-standing ways that we've done things. And now is the time, we're all changing our industry. Let's see if this is the time that other industries can change, what's being asked of us. So
is so extensive. It just, we have to get creative.
Yep.
Get creative, and it's going to need all of our partners to do it. Like all the corporate partners, there are a lot of people who are benefiting from COVID, and I think we need to hold their feet to the fire and really, put some social responsibility and bring the greater good back into the conversation.
Right. Not everybody's hurting. There's some industries that are doing quite well, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to leave some time for Q&A. If there's anything that people wanted to ask Dayna, make sure and tap those into the section, and we'll take those with the last few minutes. But I thought maybe we could end on a little higher note. We've been hitting some pretty heavy topics right now, and some rapid fire quick. So the question everybody in this industry gets asked: what's your best band live that you've seen?
My favorite live band I've ever seen. Oh, Billie Eilish played the entry on her first stop into town. She was amazing. but there's nothing like seeing that artist that is going to be big in a small room, right?
So
There's
who's that? Tell us, who should we be keeping our eye out for? Who am I going to have next?
So Andara, formerly JS Andara, he's unbelievable. Nerdy is a local rapper who I think could be the next Lizzo, like really break out. I'm trying some bands that are like already famous in my world probably aren't famous in your world already. But like Chloe and Haley, Tiana Taylor, those kinds of folks.
Awesome. So people we can be following now. So we'll say we knew them when. So
Yeah, Snow Allegra, SZA. You probably tend to think of other folks.
Yeah. How about absurd rider request? Anybody just have something that you were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that?
So not like a genuine, like I need all of the, green M&Ms, like whatever, but we had a couple people like, one asked for a handwritten poem. Someone asked for a photo of Bill Murray. Like sometimes I think they put stuff in their rider just to be funny, and we always oblige. But my staff has like the most fun with those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. So hopefully, as I've said, we'll be back in Minnesota, this group. What's your, you must do this when you come to my city?
Oh, I mean, you've got to see, it's summer, right? You've got to see a sport.
Yep.
You got to go to Target Field, the Sculpture Garden. I'm, on the board of the Walker, so I'm always going to say the Walker Art Center, and the Mia Paisley Park, obviously.
Yeah.
The food scene, hopefully the restaurants make it through. Like the food scene here is absolutely incredible. Biking, I mean, just take a day.
Super active city. People are going to love it.
Yeah. Oh,
I can't wait. Yeah.
It's the best, but just don't tell anyone.
That's very Minnesotan. Heaven forbid.
You know what Prince said? He's like, I like Minneapolis. It's so cold. It keeps the bad people out. Yeah. We like it that way.
The way we like it. So when you tell us a little bit, Dayna, like what's giving you hope right now in this industry? Where are you finding some glimmers of hope?
So I am really hopeful about live music on the other end of this. I don't think COVID exposed like a flaw in our industry. I don't think we're, at the same risk of like the movie theaters, where people are getting used to, they're investing in, high quality home theaters, and that, will that behavior change? Like that is not our situation right now. Our situation is that there is a virus that literally makes you not be able to be in a room with other people. And the amount of times I've heard from everybody across the board, like, all I want is to go to a concert again. I just can't wait to see live music again. I think, the roaring 20s came after the Spanish flu. I think when we find a vaccine or a cure, I think we're going to go right back into another roaring 20s. And without a doubt, we're going to, go from I had a friend say, we're going to go from the germaphobe economy when no one, everyone's too afraid of germs, to the agoraphobic economy when no one wants to be in their house anymore.
Right.
And out all the time. So, that's the hope of like, if my members can make it through this, we're in for some really like fun times. The bands, artists make 75% of their revenue on tour. So they're sitting at home without revenue. They're going to have to tour. So we're going to have more shows than ever. I find a lot of hope in people coming together of just all of these really cool digital events that I, wouldn't have known about or wouldn't have been able to participate in before this.
Yeah.
And I find the forced innovation also really exciting. Mm-hmm. I think live streaming is going to be a total additive, a new revenue stream, and it's going to be something fun for people to play around with and experiment with. Again, it does not replace the experience of going out to a show.
Exactly. There is nothing like that collective live experience of being at a show. And I agree. I think it's going to come back. And when it does, it'll come back with a vengeance, because people really realize, boy, I love that. I love that connection. I like singing at the top of my lungs and being with people, because there's truly nothing that can replicate that, that collective live experience. And we certainly all hope that that's true. Kirk, I don't know if there was any last question to answer before we wrap up.
We got a Couple of quick ones. Dayna, someone inquired if your dad is involved with the business in any way at this point?
He is still involved. He's not involved in the business. I bought him out. I mean, you ask about like our ability to make political statements. Like we announced as a company, we are divesting from the police, and we have done some other like really progressive racial justice, taken some progressive racial justice stances. So I'm 100% owner of the company. So that's why I can do it. I don't have investors, there's no board. Like we can do what we feel is best for our employees and our artists and our community. But he is still with us, and he spends a lot of time with my kids.
Good.
So.
And one other question, circling back to Red Alert, the question was if you've heard of any venues that are reluctant to participate in Red Alert because of the color red.
I haven't, but I know the date. So the original date of August 27th is actually the date of Trump's speech at the Republican National Convention. And so I think they didn't want to make it seem either like an approval or a condemnation. I mean, the other thing giving me hope is like just how bipartisan live music is, and we have as many Republican supporters as we do Democrats, and some of our best support actually has come from like Kansas and Texas and South Carolina. And so I haven't heard that people thought red was Republican, but I do know they did not want to, intertangle it with the Republican National Convention. But I haven't heard of anything from the venues. I think people are really excited about, ways to participate. And I would just say, like, if anyone has other like publicity campaigns or anything else that they think could be effective, what's really cool is that through NIVA, we have 2,700 clubs in every state, every congressional district that are all on the same email chain and all communicating for the first time ever. And so ideas like this are now, I don't want to say easy to execute, but at least it's feasible that if folks have ideas like that, again, it's keeping up the drumbeat and making sure people remember we're 100% down in revenue. We all love restaurants, but I bike around and I see patios packed. So they need to remember that we're still desperate to reopen at the end of this.
Yeah, and that is kind of our last call to action, that people go to Save Our Stages and learn more about what they can do and let people know. Use your personal means to get the word out. That I think that as summer comes to an end, as school gets going, which always occupies people's minds, suddenly there's going to be that fatigue, and I don't want our industry to languish in the fatigue of this, and that people thinking, oh, everything's getting back to normal. And it's like, oh, we're really far from normal. So as a group, we can use all the assets we have to continue to further the messaging that we're trying to get in front of the Congress and the Senate right now. So Dayna, we're pushing up on 1 o'clock. This was flew by for me. I hope everyone enjoyed the time. I cannot thank you enough for carving out an hour for the Event and Arena Marketing Conference with all that I know you have going right now. Just in so many different irons in the fire. So Dayna, thank you. Thank you so much for being part of our day. And then for everyone on the call, just a reminder, there's the EAMC happy hour is next week, Thursday, I think. I'm on vacation, so I won't be part of happy hour. I heard the last one went for about 5 hours. So my voice would be hoarse the next day, same as it is when I'm at the actual conference. So look forward to seeing everybody in Minnesota. Cannot wait till we can gather together again.
Don't tell anyone how nice it is here.
But then, but after you're here, you zip it. So
I put my email in the chat if anyone has any follow-up or any questions or whatever.
The best. Good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. It was really fun to chat.
Absolute pleasure, Dayna. Thank you. Thanks for all you're doing for the people we love in this business.